What would you do differently if you knew that your next deal could net you close to $500,000? For a lot of people, that would be pretty life-changing money.
So essentially what we've purchased is a 769 square meter block. It's with an existing house on it.
So you've got just under 700K of equity going into this, but that equity for the next deal gets turned into more like 1.2, 1.3 million.
Doing the split contracts option just really meant that we were able to move in and out of the deal significantly quicker.
If you could manufacture over $500,000 in equity from a single property deal in under 14 months, would you want to know how that works? Because in this webinar, I sat down with Marco and we broke down the exact strategy that we call split contracts. And it's where you buy one property, you subdivide the land into multiple titles, and you create value instead of waiting for years for the market to do it for you. Now, this session we run through the real numbers of his first and latest project and the exact process that he's using right now in his current market to accelerate his wealth through small residential developments. So if you're curious about how subdivision works and whether it could actually work for you, then watch this video. We'll break it all down step by step.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to have you here. We got lots of people coming through from the weight room, which is always nice to see. Hopefully you've got your cup of tea all ready to go. Hopefully not drinking a cup of coffee if you're over on the eastern seaboard. Maybe you'd be drinking coffee, Marco. Would that be about right? What's it, 4 o'clock there?
Maybe it's still a bit too late, I reckon.
Depends on whether you're having a late one or not. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so it could be a late one. I can see lots of familiar faces in the room. Welcome to everybody who's joining us today. Good to have you here. We are here to break down Marco's 1 into 4 lot subdivision. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover. It's the real deal stuff, guys. It's the real numbers. It's pulling back the curtain. It's having a really good look into the work that Marco's put in to get that deal. And it's such a pleasure to have you here with us tonight, Marco. Welcome to you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So what I thought we'd do, let's just kick it off, is sort of start with this question around what would you do differently if you knew that your next deal could net you close to $500,000? Like, what would that do for your life? You know, for a lot of people, that would be pretty life-changing money. And, you know, that would certainly do a lot in terms of putting you in good stead for your next deal and for building out your real estate portfolio. And thankfully tonight, that's the sort of deal that we're going to be taking you through as well. So it'd be interesting for you, I'm sure, and that's why you're joining us this evening, to just have a look at what are the nuances, like what are the details, what are the things that you would normally have to research and look at to find out if, you know, this deal is even going to stack up. How do you do the numbers? And that's ultimately what we wanted to kind of go through in this session. So as I mentioned, I can see plenty of familiar names, but I also see a lot of unfamiliar names as well. So if you haven't come across me before, or maybe we crossed paths you know, some time ago and you've forgotten who I am, my name is Michael Tiemens, and I am the founder of Viva, which is a boutique and premium education and coaching community. And so we specifically focus on subdivision as the strategy, is the core fundamental strategy. And look, we help everyday property investors, just like Marco, realize their dreams and get themselves into their first or their next 6-figure profit deal, which is exactly what we'll be taking you through this evening. So look, I've been doing this for a while, 14 odd years. I actually started off, you know, doing small lot subdivision deals, 1 into 2s. I did 5 of those. That was enough for me to build up my equity and then really pivot into more full-time property development, which is what I did back in 2017. Started a business, started to employ some people, started to raise more capital. And look, over the last 8 or so years, I've raised over 40.7 million in capital. That's what we manage today. That's funds under management. Delivered over $170 million in projects. That's development projects. And we've got a $280 million pipeline there coming through as well, which will be built out over the next couple of years. Current real estate portfolio sitting at 80 million in value. And look, I've won a couple of awards as well. So more recently, I won a Good Australian Good Design Award for our Gate 8 project. So look, that's enough about me. Tonight is all about Marco, but I just wanted to refresh your memory just in case we hadn't crossed paths lately. Now, it's the start of the year, right? And so often we start the year with big ambitions. We've got big goals. We spend some time over Christmas kind of mapping out where we'd like to finish the year. And straight off the bat, I'd love to invite you to participate in booking in a one-on-one chat with one of my team. We help you map out a plan. We look at your portfolio. We can help you with strategy. We can talk you through subdivision and what all that means. And so what I'm going to do is paste just a quick link in the chat box there where you can effectively go in, find a time in the diary if you choose to, and book one of those in for yourself, because it can be a great way just to get clarity and just to clear your headspace, start to map out the next few priorities for yourself and for your own investing. And there's no harm, right? It's free, so it doesn't cost you anything. So we've only got a limited number of spots. I asked the guys to clear some of their calendars in the next few days. So go ahead, book one of those in, and just let us know in the comments section as well that you've booked that in. Just write "booked" in the comments box there as well. Bit of housekeeping for tonight as well. This is workshop. This is like Q&A. Like, I'll be asking Marco some questions, and we've pulled together some slides as well. But look, this is free for you guys to ask questions as well. So if there's anything that, hey, look, we don't cover, or that maybe we say something, or Marco explains something and it sort of piques a question, write it in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on that as well, so that we can get Marco to explain it a bit further. All right, let's kick off. Marco, welcome to you. Why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, a bit about your background, what you do, your age, occupation, that kind of thing. I'm sure people would be interested to know that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Nick. Good to be here and talking through this. So I guess a bit about me. I studied mechanical engineering as an undergrad at uni, and then did business as a postgraduate after a few years working in industry. I've been in the mining industry for 8 years, and went straight into that out of uni, and have been in that industry in a variety of roles since. Currently in a project management role, so some transferable skills, but really nothing directly related to property. In terms of my investing experience, and it's really been stocks and equity. As going up through uni, you're always hearing these hot tips, and think you're going to make your wealth out of that. And that hasn't obviously gone too well for me. And in terms of property, I guess today really I've just focused on the passive buy and hold investing strategy. So letting the market really do the heavy lifting for you. Growing up, this was a strategy that my old man had really employed his whole life. So I got the benefit of seeing him build his portfolio, a slow moving portfolio, and running into all the challenges that come with that strategy. So I got to learn from that secondhand, see the benefits, but also a lot of the challenges.
What would you say some of the challenges were that he faced from you standing on the sidelines watching his journey? What were those challenges that you noticed even at a young age?
Yeah, I think obviously the lending challenge. With that strategy, you're typically trying to get as much debt as you can, really, and eventually start paying that down as those properties gain capital or grow. The total top line grows, and eventually you're going to run to lending challenges where the bank just goes, your debt's too high, and no more, until essentially you refinance or sell some, etc. So that's obviously a big one in terms of scaling it. I think also sometimes it's diversifying your risk and also timing the market. I saw quite a few instances where you're not quite fully in tune with what the market is doing, and even when you are, it's hard to time that market. And very often there's a lot left on the table.
Yeah. And so would you say, does your dad still have his portfolio? Has he continued to grow that, or has he consolidated it down? Like what stage would he be at now?
he's started to consolidate it down. He's basically at retirement age. So yeah, he's essentially consolidating that down now.
Okay,
It has been over a number of years.
and how would you say that that has now influenced like your experience, right? Because I mean, you're not coming in here today as a seasoned property developer and someone who's been doing this for a long time. What's been your experience personally with property so far?
I mean, so personally with property so far, it's really just been the buy and hold strategy. As I said, purchased a property in areas that I felt were going to be strong performers, both from a capital and a return perspective. And that's been the extent of my experience really in the property space.
Yep. And like, give us a bit of an idea in terms of what those buy and holds sort of look like what types of property are, like apartments or units or, townhouses, house and lands, established property.
It's all apartments and established properties. So fortunately now that I've been part of the Viva program and some of the tools that have been that I've got access to, I've actually gotten rid of all of them. I've seen the light, and
Got rid of all the properties.
Yeah, all the passive investments. Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Big decision. So what gave you the confidence to do that? Because that's not just a decision you make on a whim, is it?
No. Look, I guess that one of the tools that you gain access to as part of the Viva program is the opportunity cost analysis, which essentially just helps you analyze your current portfolio or individual properties and see what return you're getting, and you can sort of benchmark that against what you can go and get in the market for REITs or in the stock market or term deposits, and compare that to what a lot of people in property development are getting on their deals. And I think when you do that, it's pretty clear to see that there's far more effective strategies out there.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think for a lot of investors, property investors, that is, there seems to be this reluctance to focus on like one of the core metrics that I talk a lot about, which is your return on equity. So how hard is your equity working for you, right? Like the number one goal in property investing is really to get the highest return in the least possible time with the lowest amount of risk. But rarely are we actually focusing on the equity return annualized. And when you start to do that, it really starts to shine a light on, how well are your properties in your portfolio doing? Sometimes you do need to cut away a bit of the dead wood in order to move forward. Sometimes that frees up borrowing capacity. Sometimes it frees up equity. Sometimes it frees up both. And, that's an important part of the process, isn't it? To take the next step forward.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the deal. Run us through it, mate. What does it look like?
So essentially, what we've purchased is a 769 square meter block. It's with an existing house on it in Glendalough. So as you can see in that photo, it's very close to the CBD, and there's a train station just off to the left. So in terms of access to the CBD, it's very, very convenient. So there's no DA on the site. It's an owner occupier. And essentially, desperate need of a demolition and redevelopment. There's in my view, there was no real opportunity to renovate and potentially subdivide off the back, and I just wouldn't be the highest and best use for that site. So, essentially it's zoned R60. So there is potential for five dwellings on this. However, we'll go through it in detail, but we're looking to go for a 4-lot subdivision on this. Purchase price.
Obviously, we're over in WA. So just talk people through who aren't familiar with WA planning, what R60 zone means.
So it's 60. That's 60 units per hectare, I believe it is how they define that coding. So obviously, then that determines, that will give you your minimum and average lot sizes for any subdivision, and that stipulates what's the yield of that particular site.
Yep, correct. Yep, very good. And like you talked about, you sort of talked about, look, you can potentially do up to 5 units, but you're looking more so to do 4, and going through this exploration process of highest and best use. I mean, why is the highest and best use not 5 units, do you think?
So as we go through the process, we'll clear this up and become more confident in that assumption, because right now it is still an assumption. But based on the initial feedback I've got from my private town planner and I guess other developers as well, is going to 5, it's going to introduce significant council contributions, which will likely kill that deal. There's also likely to be additional requirements from council, such as potentially visitors parking, which then makes already quite tight units even tighter. And then obviously you've got an additional unit to construct, which brings up your construction costs. Not that that's a cost that I'm planning to bear, based on the strategy we're going to go with. So yeah, those are a few of the considerations. So yeah, in going through the feasibility, wanted to ensure that the deal it wasn't only going to stack up as a 5-lot subdivision. It had to be a bankable 4. And if there was opportunity to go to 5, great. But we're working on the 4-lot option.
Yeah, it's good. And I think it's an important distinction too, because for a layman, you'd think, well, if you can get 5 units on it, surely that's better, right? But when you start to peel back the layers and you look at other hidden costs and you look at complexities around design, turning circles, getting cars in and out, potentially market impacts or resale impacts, maybe you can't achieve the same sort of level of revenue across the site because you're diminishing the product, and that's just not going to be a product to market fit. And so there's lots of considerations, as you mentioned, and I just wanted to point that out and highlight that out, that it's not always about the biggest and the best. Sometimes it is about going a bit smaller, taking a bit less risk. Maybe sometimes it involves keeping the existing house and, you know, retaining a lot of that intrinsic value. And so you've got to be able to run different scenarios through your feasibility, don't you, to sort of get to that ultimate truth of, well, what is the right path forward? How do I direct my consultant team, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And also engaging, as you say, engaging the agents early and getting an idea of what that market really is chasing. Yep.
And purchase price, so you're sort of talking mid-ones, yeah? So it's getting up there. It's what would the median be in Perth at the moment? It's sort of sitting at about, what, 850, 900?
I think the median just ticked over a mil.
Over a mil.
I think it's just as, yeah.
So you sort of, you know, you're getting up there, but for 4 units, you're sort of looking at purchasing around 350 per unit, 375 per site, per lot. And talk us through how you negotiated the deal. What did that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, it came on market, but really, I guess what we asked for was 42 days finance and due diligence period, and then 21 days settlement. So when I was talking with the agent, I just tried to get an understanding of, you know, what did the seller want? Was there anything other than price were there any other terms that were important to him? And I guess in that period, I came to learn that he also was looking to acquire a property in the hills, and was therefore a bit of time, and also the rent back option was something that was important to him. So I knew that if I was going to give him that option, I was going to be able to potentially get a bit more time in terms of the finance and DD period, which we ended up getting.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at that and you say, well, okay, 42 days as a finance clause seems pretty generous. For most traditional, conventional purchases, maybe 14 days, maybe 21 days to get finance approval. You've sort of requested 42 days, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that it was the boot camp weekend, late November last year, where this offer was accepted, and it was going to cross over into Christmas. Is that right?
Yeah. So the offer got accepted on the Saturday of the boot camp. So whatever that was, 1st of December, I think, or end of November. So yeah, essentially put the offer in on the Friday, flew over, offer got accepted on the Saturday.
Yeah. And then 21 days settlement post finance clause. That would freak out a few people. How did you sort of move so quickly and this just settled last week, yeah?
Yeah, settled last Friday. Yep.
And so just talk us through that, because that even gives me a few grey hairs. How do you sort of move so quickly out of, because you're sort of doing DD through that finance clause as well, aren't you? Like you're sort of trying to turn over every single rock. You're looking for scorpions. You're looking for what's wrong with this thing. You're looking for an out, as well as financing. But then how do you go from that to settling in 21 days? You must have had to put your skates on.
Oh, look, potentially a bit of ignorance, to be honest, Mick, because that in all the previous purchases, that was pretty obviously standard for what I'd done in the past. But I guess having all the team on board, all your conveyancer and lawyers, etc., all sorted, and all the finance sorted well beforehand, meant that really once we went unconditional, it was a bit more of a formality, really.
Yep. Yep. That's good. Well done, mate. There's lots of people writing in the comments. Congratulations, exciting. Congratulations on the settlement. We've also had a few questions come through as well. We might just take a quick breather and go through those.
Cool.
Scott's asked, is this your first purchase or / deal using the Viva program?
Yes.
Yep.
It is.
When did you join, out of curiosity? I'm trying to recall, but it was a couple of months before the boot camp, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was end of August, I believe.
End of August. And so you've obviously smashed through, all of the education modules. I think you've pretty much attended every single weekly coaching call. You're a very familiar face on the coaching calls.
Yeah.
That's probably helped with momentum, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I guess my process was I wanted to race through the content as quick as I could, and there's a lot of it, and it's all there's a lot in there. So I raced through it just to understand the process end to end, and I've just made a concerted effort to rock up to the coaching calls weekly. For at least the first probably 2 months, I had no real personal questions or deals to bring to the table, but just learning from all the members in there, and everyone's at various stages, and getting to learn from everyone at their various stages and the challenges that they go through, and then also seeing how your advice and feedback, but also then the community's input as well. It's all a learning experience.
Yeah. And that sort of feeds into Megan's question as well. She's asked, how long have you been in the Viva course? So we answered that before finding this deal that stacks up. I think you looked at quite a few deals, didn't you, before you found this one? I sort of recall you putting forward FISOs and whatnot, and then this one kind of came up and we went through it.
Yeah.
Pretty good signs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did do a few, and to be honest, like I was still very much gaining confidence in putting together a FISO and all the costs and everything that go into it, and what to look for in terms of your services and everything, which we'll touch on. But this was the first one where I was like, the numbers at least are stacking up early. I brought it to the coaching call, and the feedback was good. Obviously got some pointers to go run away and clarify. But yeah, there's a bit of a learn by fire, I guess.
Yeah. And you've been bringing quite a few others to the table as well of late. It seems as though once you sort of jag that first one, they don't stop coming. But that's obviously a result too of demonstrating to the market and to your agents. And look, we talk a lot about inch wide, mile deep. Just focus on a couple of markets. Don't stretch yourself too thin. You don't want to spread your focus. You just want to be like 1 or 2 suburbs, 1 or 2 areas, and just go deep in those markets. And soon enough, people figure out who's who in the zoo, and they figure out more about you, and then all of a sudden you start getting a bit off-market stuff, pre-market stuff, and that's just how it naturally evolves. And over time the deals just get better and better. Damien's asked, what quality of product for market? Is this middle or high end? What would you say?
I'd say it's sort of for this market, it would probably be the higher end for this market, because as you can see in that photo, there's a lot of really old units in the area. So for this particular area, I'd say it's probably on the higher end with respect to the area, but generally I'd probably say mid to upper, spec. Yeah. And for probably a lot of other markets around the country, particularly like middle ring, if you're talking about Melbourne, Sydney, even Brisbane, it's probably mid of the range, like in terms of some of the comps that we'll show you tonight as well. But as Marco says, it's not hard to stand out in this particular market with good quality product. It doesn't have to be super, super luxe to kind of get that A-grade star. All right, let's move on. So I think we've got a couple of extra photos here. We got a bit of two-tone color going on in the star. We got the rust stains in the pool.
This sort of just looks like some type of Miami resort that you go to. But yeah, so you're sort of seeing here that, look, this could be brought back to life, absolutely. But is that the best use for the land? And I think you've identified that it isn't. What's going on here? I mean, is this in a flood zone or anything like that, or?
I just think that's wear and tear over time. I think that potentially there is a bore as well in there potentially, which maybe the quality of water as well.
Yeah. It could also be like splashback from when it rains and things like that. Dirt just sitting on the material for long periods of time. So yeah, but that gives you a bit of an idea of what it is. There's a photo of you with your lovely partner standing out front of the board there. But let's just start to work through some of the challenge. I mean, it's all well and good to talk about the good stuff, but we want to know about the hairy stuff. We want to know what are the big dirty hairs that you had to pluck out of this thing before you kind of got comfortable to move ahead. I mean, to spend $1.5 million on buying it and then go through the process of subdivision. And so you've sort of talked about finance and borrowing, but I mean, I'd like to unpack that a little bit more. So how have you managed to structure this deal financially, and what does that look like, and how might other people in similar situations be able to do the same?
Yeah, so I guess, at the start of joining Viva, and someone told me that you were going to do this in a few months. In terms of the size of the deal, numbers, the financing side of things, I would have said, well, I can't. Like, we wouldn't be able to service that debt. We wouldn't be able to get that loan. But working with the teams at Loans Australia, which again came through the Viva community, they helped assess the whole situation, my whole financial situation, and suggest how we could restructure the existing debt, which would ultimately really unlock my borrowing capacity, increase the borrowing capacity, and just make the existing debt that I've got work significantly harder for me. So essentially how we finance this deal, it's 80% lent against the property. So that's within the purchase it in the trust. And then the 20%.
What?
Sorry, I'll mute. Oh. Sorry, Marco, I think I accidentally muted everybody. Can you just unmute yourself? Guys, if you just try and keep yourself on mute if you can. Yep, you're back, mate.
Cool. Yeah, so essentially, I don't know where I cut off, but it's 80% is against the property. So within the trust, and then the 20% stamps, all your costs to run the deal, essentially are going to be funded out of a debt recycling facility, which is secured against our primary place of residence. So that's the piece that I was saying. Loans Australia helped restructure the existing debt and create a facility off our existing PPR, and we can now use that to run the deal.
Yeah. And you also mentioned, obviously, you've offloaded a couple of properties. That's freed up some serviceability, no doubt, as well. Did the rent back with the owner, did that sort of contribute to any sort of serviceability or anything like that on it?
Yeah, I think they did. I think for the 80%, they factored that into that piece. Yeah, but it wasn't. It was a contributing factor.
Yeah, but they shadow obviously the rental income that's going to come in from that. Probably down to 80, 90%. Okay, so debt recycling facility sort of registered against the PPR, and then that equity comes out, and you obviously borrow for the purchase. That's secured at 80% against the title with the new lender. Was it a different lender than the PPR lender?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Which is obviously an important thing to do. We talk a lot about that in terms of not just asset protection, but cross securitization and staying away from all of that sort of nonsense too. All right, let's just move into the sort of the planning risk and how you got comfortable with planning. We'll come back to exit strategy because we've got a couple of slides on that, because realistically that's probably the most important part of the puzzle. But how did you get comfortable with the planning risk linked to it?
So I guess just engaging with a private town planner early. I'd already started working with a town planner to review other deals as I was coming across them, and so as soon as I saw the site, pretty much the first person I contacted was the private town planner, just to get his eyes over it, get his initial advice, and flag any real concerns.
Yeah. And what came out of that? I mean, what was the thing that sort of gave you the confidence to say, hey, there's something here?
Just confirmation of the yield, really. So he came back and was basically flagging there's a 5 lot site, but then just flagged the risks that came with that, and then essentially just said, look, a 4 lot site, if you can make that stack in your feasibility, that is it's there's no planning risk really in that one.
Yeah. And look, this isn't the first one that's been done around the area. We'll go through that in a moment. But that sort of gave you some confidence as well that, hey, there's precedence here. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not pioneering anything. We try and avoid that at all costs. We don't want to be the first in the market to be doing something. That's often not a good sign. What about the rent back clause? Because there was a couple of little sort of nigglies with that, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I guess this is ignorance on my part, but I wasn't aware of that. You actually made me aware of that at the boot camp. And when I said, look, we got the rent back in there as well. uh, Essentially, it was in the contract, but there was no agreement in terms of how exactly that would be managed, whether that was going to be a tenancy agreement, etc. And that's where you, I guess, flagged that with me and encouraged me to do a licensing agreement, which essentially wraps it up within the settlement, but then also doesn't give them the tenancy rights coming out the back of that. Fortunately, I had the team at Denway's Legal, doing the conveyancing for me, so they were already across that. I just wasn't. So that was just I guess a learning experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's fish hooks littered throughout property, okay? There's so many little things that can just catch you along the way. And, that's one that's caught me out in the past. And we all know as property investors that it doesn't matter what part of the country that you're in, the Residential Tenancies Act is there to protect the tenants. And sometimes it can be really difficult to get them out, even when they're not paying you and they don't want to move out. And the last thing that you want is someone in there under squatters' rights. They used to live in the property. They've taken an extra 6 months to move all their stuff out. And so you've got to have rights, particularly when we're talking about development, because in development, time's money. If the project stops moving, it just costs you money, and it erodes your profit and erodes your returns, your equity returns, which is the whole reason why we do it in the first place. I always sort of say developments are like sharks. When they stop swimming, they die. And you just can't have any little things that catch you out that are going to delay your project, particularly when you've gone and sold lots, when you've got purchasers that are waiting to move in, when you've got consultants and contractors that are on the hook, contracts are signed, and you're there and you can't get that person out of your house. And so that was the right thing to do. You withhold money at settlement, you get a license agreement in place, which gives you, equal rights effectively. It just lays the groundwork. And there's a lot more that you can do with that in hand. So that was well done by you. Talk us through construction costs. Like, how did you get comfortable with that? I mean, this has been a thunderstorm for quite a few years now since COVID. And one thing that I hear quite frequently from property investors is it's hard to kind of get a gauge of what things cost to build, and depending on which part of the country and the type of build. So how did you approach that?
Yeah, so initially, might be giving away a slide to come, but there was the property behind this one, which is essentially exactly the same in terms of dimensions. And initially, I was trying to reach out to them and understand their build costs. Kind of wasn't relevant just because of the time. It was too many years ago to really benchmark now to get an idea. So I got rough lot dimensions and passed that on to a builder and just asked for a few builders actually, just to get a roughie in terms of how much you think this would cost, how much should I be banking in my feasibility, and the rough number was 550. Now, in the same process, I engaged an agent who pretty much exclusively sells home and land split contracts, and he's been in the building industry for 30 years, so he knows it really well. And he was able to share with me some very, very similar developments and builds to what we would be looking at on this particular site. And he shared some of those costs as well. And he was sort of really encouraging me to put it down. So we'll come to it, but essentially in the feasibility, I went for that lower number and then just provided a pretty healthy contingency in there just to cover ourselves as well.
Yep. Yep. Very good. And one of the big things that we do on every site is we always check our service locations. And so most of the time, guys are sort of posting these in our group, or they're posting them before a coaching call. We're sort of reviewing these together. By doing that, we sort of found that there was a couple little things that you need to investigate just with the sewer and the easement there. All the other service connections and service locations looked fine, but just talk us through the sewer and how you got comfortable with that.
Yeah, so essentially the mainline sewer runs in the rear, the property behind this one, and it does have a spur that comes off into this property. But as you flagged in the coaching call, again, learning for me, there's a potential that we would need to gain access to that in order to connect in. And so essentially how I got comfortable with that risk was contacting the owner behind. Fortunately, he is pro development. He developed the properties behind, so was very willing to provide us access should we need it.
Very good, very good. There's a little bit of slope on the land as well, is that right?
Look, it's under 1 meter, so we have allowed some retaining on there. So again, built that into the fee zone, made sure that we're covered there in case we do have those costs come in. So it's baked in there. If we don't need it, it's just back in our pockets.
Yeah, no, very good. We've got a few more questions coming in through here. We've got a question from Waylon who says, how did you set up to minimize tax? That's a pretty loaded question there. Do you care to share sort of the structure or the entity that you purchased this in?
Yeah, so essentially purchased it within a trust, or the corporate trustee company. And essentially we haven't set up any structure that's outside of that yet. Obviously, once we come closer to realizing the profit, we will then work with the accountants and depending on the income, both of myself and my partner, we'll then make sure that we distribute that out as efficiently as possible, whether that be to another bucket company or a trust, or we'll go through that closer to the time.
Yep, well answered. Any particular reason why you bought it in a legal entity as opposed to your personal name?
I'm sure you're going to tack on a few additional points, but I guess asset protection is one. Yeah, that's probably the main one. The ability to then be more efficient from a tax perspective is the other. Those are the two biggest drivers really that immediately come to mind. Yep,
absolutely. And also too for borrowing and just the flexibility. So not for this deal, because obviously you had the funding lined up for this deal already. You knew that you could commit to that on your own terms. But for, say, the next one, maybe you overlap a deal. You're out there, you're looking for another one at the moment. We know that. The next one might be set up in something that's a little bit more flexible, which allows you to go out and potentially work with a money partner, or raise a little bit of capital around the project, maybe bring some in a little bit later down the track. Generally speaking, it just provides you a lot more flexibility, but it also helps you with your borrowing capacity as well over time, because as Marco just touched on, he's now got the ability to distribute that income where he sees fit. And so one of the things that I teach you is how to set yourself up almost like running a property business. Well, the quicker and sooner you realize that property is more like a business than it is a passive investment, you can quickly just get on with doing it properly. And what you want to be doing is making profits in deals and then treating that as income, which over time you can then demonstrate that to a bank or a lender as genuine income, serviceability. And that's obviously one of the big reasons why why you've done that as well. We've got a question here from Scott. He said, I think you've answered this, but how long does it take to learn and understand the program? Good question.
Oh, look, I'd say that's probably dependent on your learning style. As I said, for me, I really wanted to get through it and understand all the bits and pieces, at each stage of a typical development. So I got through it pretty quickly, but I guess I also had comfort knowing that there was always the um, the not the wiki, but the what would you call it, Michael? The hangout, the local hangout where everyone can post, you can ask questions. You've got the weekly coaching call as well, where you can always come back and ask these questions throughout the process. So for me personally, I moved through it as basically as quick as the content was available, and then came back and asked questions as we progressed through the weekly coaching calls.
Yep, very good. Damien says more margin in high end, so logic. We've got a couple of people suggesting it was rising damp, water stains. Very good. Bore water. It's terrible in Perth. Thank you, Alice. Great to see you. Ben Luke, hi Marco. Congrats on your progress. You mentioned you're not planning on covering the construction costs, I think. Can you talk us through that? We might touch on that in a moment, Ben. We'll actually spend a little bit of time on that rather than just answering that one for you. Alice asks, what's involved to remove the pool? Fill it in and the costs involved in that.
So we've got a rough quote. Well, we've got a few quotes for that already. There is a potential we could fill it in, but we price it on the more expensive option of removing it and then backfilling.
Yep. Lisa Figgin says, how are you going about financing for the build, subdivision, etc.?
Did you want to come back to that?
We will come back to that, yes, because the build component plays a role in that. We're going to run you through all the numbers too, Lisa. So we're going to break it down in terms of what are the strategy costs, what are the forecasted financing costs, all of that sort of stuff too. Craig Smith says, could I ask? That's his question. Was there any more to that, Craig? Maybe just go and check your chat box there because you might have only half typed it in. Andrew says, hi Marco, how are you planning on funding okay, we'll come back to that as well. A lot of people are wondering how you're going to fund construction. Did you say the build cost was $550K from Rob? Was that per unit or the total build cost? We'll come back to that. Chris Yates says, is this total build cost? I need this builder's details. Yeah, I mean, if you could build 4 units for $550,000, I think he'd have half the country. And then Rob's just commented on that. We've got Anna, what if you build a dual lock and you want to keep one and sell one? What structure? Look, generally speaking, it's a good question, Anna. You would be speaking to the asset protection specialist before you sign the contract, because if that was your intended strategy, then it would make a difference on whether you are buying in personal name, unit trust, discretionary trust, hybrid trust. And so it's different for every person. There's just not a sort of a blanket rule when it comes to that. A big part of it is going to be tax, long-term tax though, and making sure that you are legally minimizing your tax exposure as you have the right to do. Vivek, what weekly income are you looking at for each lot? Instead, if you want to sell the lots, what can we get for each lot? We're going to go through that, Vivek. $550 per unit, Craig says. This is the extended question, I assume. $550 per unit is 2.2 million and 1.5 land costs with total 3.7 million. What totals on top? We're going to go through all that, Craig. So I'm reading these as I go, guys. How long does Viva coaching last? Is it just one project? But no, it's forever. As long as you're doing it and as long as I'm alive. Anna, great question. Okay. Talk us through the program, mate. How long is this going to take you?
So, as you can see in the timeline there, we're shooting for 12 months. However, in the feasibility, we're working off 14 months from settlement through to selling the newly titled lots.
Yeah. Okay. And you'd sort of say that your marketing, because you don't have marketing in your program here, is that what you've got down there at sort of end of month 7?
Yes, yeah, effectively that's where we yes we go to market to sell as a home and land package,
Yep.
subject to titles, of course. Yep.
Yep. Okay, so essentially you're giving yourself sort of halfway through the project. You've got your planning permit in place. You're submitting for titles. You're doing some works, and then you're launching to go to market. You've effectively got 7 months to sell the lots and settle on the lots.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is quite a bit of time for individuals. All right, very good. How are we enjoying this, folks? Is this stuff interesting? I mean, please send through in the comment section and just let me know what you think. A lot of great questions are coming through here, and we may not get through them all because I'm sort of mindful of time. We'd allocated an hour for this, and we've still got quite a bit to get through. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put out that offer again. If you do have questions, if you're wanting to drill down deeper into this, and you want to spend more time than just asking one question on a chat box, you want to speak to someone in real life, I'm just going to post that link again for you, where you can go in and find a time that works for you in the diary and go and book in a one-on-one with one of our team. We can rip it back, we can strip it down, we can do all sorts of things based on your portfolio, like where you're at right now and looking ahead in terms of where you're wanting to get to. I mean, you're seeing lots of great stuff here in terms of what Marco has been able to do for him personally, but that doesn't necessarily help you. What's going to help you is working on you personally and what you can do. And so that's totally available there for everyone. I've just put the link into the comment section there. Jump in, book yourself a spot. There's only a handful of them available, so it's a first in, best dressed. Anyway, let's keep moving. So let's work through exit strategy. This is by and large the biggest component when it comes to development, making sure you've got multiple exit strategies, but also making sure that you're progressing forward with the best exit strategy. So what can you tell us around the exit, Marco?
So I guess maybe just quickly touching on a previous point, because you got it circled there, Mick, but one of the things that also gave me comfort in terms of what we could do on the site was the lot directly behind it is the identical shape and size. And so obviously you can see four units on there. And so that immediately gave us part of the confidence that I needed. So now in terms of the exit strategy, really, the strategy is a 1 into 4 subdivision. That's a primary strategy we're focusing on, with an exit via split contracts. So to all the questions that have come in, we wouldn't be funding the construction myself. It would be selling it as a split contract, a home and land, a land and build contract. So as Mick alluded to, Mick always says in the program, build in exits. And so for me, it was important to assess this deal and run quite a few scenarios in terms of the 4 unit, the 5 unit, going all the way through to construction and making sure that each of those stacked up. I guess as a first deal for me, that's something I wanted to have confidence in, so that if there was any changes that came into the mix that we couldn't have foreseen at the start of the project, we could pivot and would still be able to exit with a healthy return. So yeah, while the numbers stacked up on all of them, doing the split contracts option just really meant that we were able to move in and out of the deal significantly quicker, reducing our peak debt. It reduces the time in the deal, and as a result, the end profit and the return on equity significantly went up. And so, yeah, it just de-risks the project for us, allowing us to realize profit sooner.
Yeah. And how long ago were these units at the rear built, would you say?
I believe it was about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, because these are sort of quite older, as you can sort of see from some of the photos there. I mean, still in reasonable nick. They're also pretty decent sizes too, aren't they? So you've got total ground floor there at 105 square meters. So house of 59 plus 37 there for the garage. You've got an alfresco and porch, and then 89.5 square meters on the first floor. So for anyone that's sort of here tonight that doesn't quite, that doesn't translate into like size. You're talking sort of 190 square meters, which is a very comfortable sort of 4-bedroom home, plus activity center. Generally speaking, if you can sort of get that mix into 180 square meters, you're sort of coming across a really nice sweet spot in terms of what that's going to cost you to build versus generally what you can achieve in a sale price, depending on what you've paid for the land. And so those are good sort of metrics. And as you can see there, this one here recently sold for 1.298 million, 1.3, call it 1.3 million. Was that last year? I think it was last year, wasn't it?
I actually, look, I could be wrong, but I actually spoke to that developer, and they went at the start of analysing the deal, they went up from 1.25, and then I think the developers either of the view that the market's going to keep moving in this particular area, and so he's holding on to them.
Yep. Right. Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, it doesn't get any more cut and dry than that, right? You've got a block which is literally at the rear, inverted, the same shape as the one that you're looking at, and you can pretty much just take that stencil, put it on yours, and so long as nothing has changed in terms of planning or precedence or anything like that, you're essentially just modeling what's already been done, right? You're riding on the coattails of success. I'm sure there's people sitting there going, how on earth did you get in front of this deal? Like, I mean, you've told us the story, but it almost seems like too good to be true moment. But I mean, you sort of hustled to get this deal, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing the work, and it did come on market, but I had already, again, some templates you provided in the course. I had done a letterbox drop on essentially every single site in Glendalough that could be subdivided. I dropped a letter in there, and it did come on market, but that owner actually did reach out to me and just gave me the heads up, like, hey, this house has gone on market, so check it out.
And do you think that played a role in, I guess, you being the sort of successful purchaser, the candidate that came through, got the 42
potentially
finance?
Yeah, potentially. I know that there was another, at least what the agent told me anyway, was that there was another one at least very close, but apparently he had annoyed the seller pretty early on, and yeah, that could have been the thing that then swayed him to take our offer.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so let's just work through how split contracts work, because you may have not heard of this before. It is a strategy that I teach, because it does have the capacity to create outsized returns from real estate while lowering the risk. Remember what I said at the beginning of this session. Property is really about how do I get the highest return in the quickest possible time frame with the lowest amount of risk. And so when we apply that lens through the deals that we review and we look at, we're always asking the right questions about how do I lower the risk? How do I speed up the program? How do I get a higher return? How can I maximize my revenue? Like, these are good, healthy questions to be asking. Now, split contracts don't work on every multi-unit development project. That they only work on certain projects. And that was a process that you had to work through, Marco, with your team. And as it turned out, pretty common in this market. The market has got enough heat in it at the moment that there's enough of the buyer pool that you're targeting there to take on that construction risk for you. But effectively, we're talking two-part contract. So Marco, as the developer, buys the land, runs the permit, organises the financing, runs all the services, puts in all the infrastructure, if you want to call it that, to create 4 new lots. So we're deleting the old title and we're going through a process to create 4 new titles. Those titles, once they are titled, allow us to then settle with a new purchaser. We can market the properties and we can sell the properties long before we've got the titles in hand, but we can't actually settle on them. And so that's why Marco's got in his program a lot sooner, going to market and launching them. And he's going to have all his marketing material. He's going to have all the design of the townhomes already done. He's going to have a builder lined up. There's going to be construction contracts already in place, just like a house and land package. You go in, you buy a land lot off the developer who's developed the estate, and then you go and find the builder that you want to build with. The only difference here is that because we've got party walls, okay, each of the dwellings are adjoined, we need to build all in one line. So same builder, single builder, 4 different build contracts. The build contracts are apportioned in their respective lot entitlements and the sizes and so on and so forth. And so effectively when a purchaser comes along, they're buying the land off Marco and they're going to settle on the land separately. But at the same time as buying the land, they're also going to enter into the construction contract with the builder. Now, Marco then goes and gets his titles, settles on those titles with the new purchasers, and then construction can begin. But they're also then having to get an individual finance contract in place to then build if they are going to be borrowing for the construction itself. So there's a few moving parts in this. So it's not exactly as simple as just offering up house and land packages. You've got to coordinate that process. You've got to be the developer. You've got to be the leader. You've got to be the person that's driving the outcome, driving the consultant team. And that's not hard. It's actually quite simple. It just requires a bit of effort, okay, and a bit of commitment. And so that's how a split contract essentially works. Now, there is a risk. There's a caveat on this, that what happens if Marco only sells 2 out of the 4? What happens if he only sells 3 out of the 4? Well, then Marco would be the last one left to sign that building contract, and he'd need to go forward and build, because Marco doesn't want to be the one that's there holding up the construction commencing and his purchasers getting their new home. And he also wants to get his money out of that last lot. And the only way he's going to do that is if he builds it and then sells it to the market on completion. Now, sales could go really well. He sells all 4 lots. We have new home buyers. We've got upsizers coming in from a small unit or an apartment, young families that are looking to sort of, make their way up on the property ladder. I mean, all sorts of people. And you would say that you've got enough conviction, and the team that you've surrounded yourself are very familiar with this type of strategy, aren't they, Marco? And that you're going to probably sell pretty well through these lots, would you say?
Yeah, pretty confident. Yep. And the comparables in the area and the amount of, off the plan sales that have gone through in the area, we're pretty confident. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So hopefully that explains what a split contract is. So let's start to move through some of the numbers and the comps and all of that sort of stuff. So because we're talking about just simple land lots, this is effectively how you've priced your lots. So the front one, probably the best one, street appeal, 721,000. The 2 middle ones, now these are all 4-bedders. They're all designated to be 4-bedders. 701,000. 711,000 for the rear one, which will probably have a bit more private open space and better layout and so on and so forth, a bit wider. Now, we've got this column over here, which basically shows how you've priced the dwellings themselves if you were to go ahead and construct them yourself and then sell them on completion. So, prices ranging from 1 I can't see because of the chat box, 1.25, 1.23, 1.23, 1.24. So remember, if we go back a couple of slides, we've got this one here for 1.298, 7 or 8 years old, probably maybe a little bit bigger than what you're planning to build, but it's dated, right? And so you would say that you've probably priced these pretty conservatively, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I believe we have, and I think we've got some of the comparables coming up, which are smaller in size and going for significantly more.
Yeah, that's right. Now, here's the trick, guys. Write this down. If you are going to do this strategy, you need to leave some profit on the table for the next person. That's the key. Marco's not so concerned, and look, I don't want to speak on your behalf here, Marco, but I assume that you're not so concerned about whether you lose out on 50 grand or 100 grand here or there. What you're probably thinking about is, how am I going to sell these lots as quickly as possible and de-risk my project? Yeah. And so if there's good money in it for you and there's a bit of money in it for the next person, well, that's a good thing, right? Because it means you're going to sell your product a lot quicker, but it also means that then somebody's getting rewarded for taking that extra bit of risk that so they wouldn't have to take if they went down the road and bought from the next development, because that one's turnkey, it's been delivered, landscaping, whole kit and caboodle for them. So that's essentially what you've done here is that you've priced these lots pretty competitively, built in the build price, because they'll be getting a construction contract at the same time. So they'll be looking at the two and saying, right, I can buy the land for this. This is what it's going to cost me to build, and this is already negotiated and already ready to roll. But it's going to be worth this. That means that we might make 70 or 80 or 100 grand, honey, at the end of this. That's worth doing it, isn't it? And waiting 10 months. And so that's the sort of psychology that you're wanting to stimulate in your purchases. So you've also got a bit of rental income in there as well. So that's from the rent back. There's commission in there at 2%. So that's to sell all 4 lots. And I think the agent that you're working with, they roll in all of the marketing costs as well in that fee, don't they? Yep. We've got to factor in GST. So there's going to be GST payable on these lots because we're creating new property, which nets out at 2.667 million. So let's just have a quick look at some of the comps in the area. Because I mean, you did, like I've obviously gone through your comparable sales list. You've probably got 30, 35 odd sales that you've been able to find of properties that are listed on market and have sold in recent months, last 6, 12 months. Break it down on the price per square metre, internal rate that is. And then these are some of the ones that sort of come up. So talk us through these.
Yeah, so I guess we were fortunate in that both Stockland and Pete had both done a development. Stockland's is already completed, so we got to see, how quick and sort of the values that a completed product sells for. And then Pete are in the process of going through their development at the moment. And these are all the two here, but they're all very similar quality, finish, etc., size, and these are all off plan, obviously. And so, yeah, you can see here like a 4x2 on a slightly smaller parcel of land than what we'd be looking at. 1.42, another one at 1.389 with a similar, same size land and similar configuration as well.
Yeah. And these internal sizes, are they about the same as what you're planning? About that 180 square feet? Yep.
Roughly, yep.
And so where's Pete's development in respect to your site?
So the site that's right behind it that we use as a bit of a copy paste, it's on the other side of that main road.
Okay, so it's pretty close in terms of vicinity, within 500 meters, I think.
Oh, within 100 meters.
So they're pretty good comparable sales. So someone's buying off the plan. Are these split contracts?
No, well, I think this is direct with Pete themselves. So I'm not.
They're delivering.
Yeah.
So for these purchases to have a turnkey finished product delivered to them, here's the keys. They've effectively got to spend nearly $200,000 more with Pete on this one here at lot 47, and $150,000 more. $130,000, $140,000 more at lot 39. And that's just 2 examples out of many.
Yep.
So that's the value proposition that you're effectively taking to the market is, well, what would you rather? An extra $150,000 at the back end? You sign the build contract, here's the builder, here's all their other stock that they've done. You can still pick colours, choices, whether you want light floors, dark floors, and so on and so forth. Or go with a Pete but pay considerably more and not have that risk, essentially. You've just got to wait. I think you've got a couple of others too. Yep. So this one here, so it's another Pete one. Different development or same, or just a different facade?
That's just different facade, yeah.
Yeah. Now these are properties that have sold. This sold on the 18th of December last year. This one sold on the 22nd. This one sold in September. So these are pretty recent. I mean, these are as good as you're going to get in terms of comparable sales. What's this one down here? So this one sold for 1.175 May last year.
Yeah, so that was in the Stockland development. So we've got a few of those other examples, which is, also only 500 meters away. But yeah, completed product. But again, that was being earlier in the year. We've seen the difference, even in the peak development when they were selling at that point. There's quite a significant uptick in the price as well. So
Yeah.
it's really handy having those very recent sales to compare to.
I think when I looked at these as well, it appeared that they had smaller internals. So I think they were sitting at about 160 square meters odd. So that gives you some comfort that there's enough depth in the market that the price points are being achieved. Okay, so there's proof, there's validation. That's also going to give you a lot more confidence to move forward too, right? So let's just start to go through some more of the numbers. So we've got our acquisition prices. So there's obviously a full feasibility that sits behind this. This is what we teach you to do. There's lots of numbers. We sort of pull them together. You've paid 1.5. You've got your stamp duty. You've got your due diligence cost in there. So I think you did some inspections, and then you had your legals and other, so conveyancing and setting up the trust structure and all of that sort of stuff. So really, before you've even started, you've spent 1.574 million of your budget.
Yep.
Then we get to the strategy costs. So walk us through these strategy costs.
Yeah, so I guess to run the complete deal, we've obviously got our planning and design, surveyor fees. We've also got within that, I've actually brought in a company that's going to assist with the development management, someone who could just be finger on the pulse at all times and managing each stage of the project. So that's included with, baked in those professional fees and the building and design. Essentially, their fee comes within that.
I think you've got a fee in there for project management down in your subdivision costs too, I'm pretty sure. So it sits in both. So they do all the planning and the design, run that process for you on your behalf for a fixed fee.
Yep.
And then at delivery, in terms of running the job, there's a different fee associated to that as well, for them to do that for you. And so you sort of mentioned it to me the other day, like, I'm pretty busy with work and I've got this and I've got that going on. And I just felt like first project, I just want to get some level of oversight on it where I'm kind of one step removed, but I'm learning through the process. And I mean, I think that's a pretty clever move by you, to help guide that.
Yeah, and I think as well, in terms of where I can put my energy and attention and focus, I think on the front end, deal analysis and deal hunting, to be able to scale it, like, building a property development business as you speak about, that's where I feel like I'm going to get my most bang for buck right now.
Yeah. It's good. So you've got demo in there. So you've got 35 grand in there for demolition of the house.
Yep.
You're also running across construction, your subdivision costs and civil works, plus design contingency as well at 5%.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you've got about $156,000 in actual works, civil works, running services, driveways, fencing, all of that sort of stuff as well. So there's a lot of numbers that kind of sit within that bigger number. But that's effectively the delivery, right? So you're not going to be able to lodge at the titles office until you've got your plan sealed. Right? You've got your statement of compliance. The authorities have said, yep, all the works have been done in accordance with the permit, and we can give it our rubber stamp. You get all of that, bundle it up, use your consultants, that gets lodged. But you've got to do those works first, right, before you can actually get your titles out of the titles office. You've also got to pay for fees, right, for your authorities, water authority, stormwater contributions, sewer contributions, installing a power pit, getting the services to the site, not just running them to each new lot, but getting it to the site. We take off the GST that we claim back, and we're left with $327,000 in strategy costs. Now, we talked about funding. Someone asked a question before, like, how are you going to finance this, Marco? Let's just run through. Oh, hang on. Before we do that, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Let's just work through construction, because you have priced in construction, yeah, because this forms an important part in getting to, well, what do I sell these lots for? You've got to be putting yourself in the mindset of the buyer. The buyer's going to be thinking, well, how much can I afford to pay for the land if the build is going to be X? And so these are sort of your numbers that you've been able to get from the process that you talked about before in your due diligence phase. So you're talking 1.8 million just for the dwellings themselves. Then you've got site works, right? Site cut, all of that. Your retaining works and all of that are located in your subdivision costs back on the previous page. And then look at your contingency. You've got a 15% contingency in there.
Yeah, so that was back to that point that I mentioned earlier, where on my quick chat with a number of builders versus the agent that I'm working with who has a lot of experience selling these types of deals, I just, to provide myself that level of comfort, I wanted to give myself a big contingency in there in case, essentially.
Yeah. So essentially what you're sort of saying to the market is you can buy a land lot off me for $700. It'll cost you $529,000 to build, and here's the builder and here's the build contract, and we're going to manage the process through to completion for you. But that's being deducted off that in sale price that you're talking about. That's how you've reverse engineered your land lot sale prices. So it is factored in there. It's just not a cost that you have to wear and time that you have to wear on your project program. So that sort of gives everybody who's been asking questions around construction a rough idea in terms of where it sort of got to. And this was largely driven by a couple of different builders that had come to you with pricing of recent jobs that they'd finished. But you just wanted to be sure that I've got enough in there, which is why you've gone and whacked that extra contingency. We always sort of say, look, 5% construction contingency is normally about enough. You've tripled that, and that's okay. But I think it's important for everybody to know that these are the numbers that are built into his feasibility. So there's a lot of conservativeness there, not just in the sale prices, but also in the construction pricing too. And hey, look, if it turns out to be $500,000 a unit to build, so be it. And that's probably likely what it'll be. But at least you know you're covered and you're moving into this with that confidence. So then financing costs are interesting. So essentially what you've done is you've settled with the land loan. That's the 80% to purchase the property, and then you're effectively paying interest all the way through that 14-month program, which works out to be about $91,000 in interest.
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, you also mentioned about the debt recycling facility. So if you pull out equity from your principal place of residence or another property, guess what? You're going to pay interest on that, because you've drawn out that equity as a loan. Now, what property should pay for that? Essentially, you want to be baking that cost into your deal as well. And that's exactly what you've done here. So you've allocated for all of the additional capital that needs to go in the project. Just because it's coming out of another project, there is a cost to that. There's an opportunity cost. So you've just applied the interest rate that you've got, which I think is 5.9%. Did you say?
Well, now it's 5 points. It's gone up 0.25 as of yesterday. So it was 5.7.
Thank you, RBA. I'm sure we're all cursing the RBA at the moment. But so there's $43,000 of additional interest in there that will be paid from the project back to the principal place of residence. You've got holding costs as well in there for that period of time. You've got application fees in there for the loan and so on and so forth. So effectively, you've got about $145,000 that you're going to pay throughout the project in interest. And that's effectively coming from the equity that's required to do the deal. So then when we look at how does this all work out in the wash, essentially you've got net revenue after all selling commissions, GST, you've added in a little bit of rental income there for you at 2.667. You've got total expenses being the land and the purchase and the acquisition, plus your strategy costs in there at 1.90, sorry, there's an extra 2 in there, 1.920, $526. Now that's broken up between debt and equity. So Marco's equity that he's got to put in the deal is $540K. He's borrowing $1.4 million from the bank. Yeah, does that make sense? That's the split. A lot of that is gone into the deposit, the 20% deposit, the stamp duty, and then all that strategy costs, the $320,000. Now, doesn't matter whether the deal is a $2.7 million deal or whether it's a $970,000 deal. The numbers are all relative, so they just move up and down the sliding scale. So if you're sitting there wondering, oh, geez, that sounds like a lot of money, or whatever it is, it's all relative. So it's all dependent on the deal that you're capable of doing next, not necessarily this particular deal, because there's many deals out there that will come in all shapes and different sizes and different price points. We then have the holding and financing costs. So that's the 145 there. So that gets deducted off our net rev, and that's got to be funded from equity too. So your peak equity jumps to $687,000. So you need to invest $687,000 into the project, not all at once, of course. It kind of just gets drip fed into the project during that 14 months all the way along. There's sort of ebbs and flows. So there's moments where lots of capital goes in, like at the very beginning, and then you'll have lots of capital going in when you start all your subdivision works and your civil works. And then you'll have lots of money coming back in when it's all said and done. But your net profit on this is $619,925 on a $687,000 investment. So just to be clear for everyone, not only when Marco sells all the lots at the end, he gets his $687,000 of original equity back out, but he also gets another $619,000 that he didn't have before in profit. Pretty cool? So you've got just under 700K of equity going into this, but that equity for the next deal gets turned into more like 1.2, 1.3 million before tax. Return on cost, so this is what we specify as development margin, 30%. Now, it's important to note that if Marco did this project as a traditional development, went through design, planning, construction, marketing, sales, settlements, subdivision, if he did all of that and funded it all, he's got increased costs along the way. He's got his increased construction costs, he's got costs of borrowing the money to do that. And look, that's all well and good. That can be fine. There's nothing wrong with doing those sorts of projects as well. But like I mentioned, subdivision is the core strategy that makes most of the value uplift. You know, I bang on about this all the time. It's really subdivision, which is creating the magic in all of this. And so where you can get away with just doing subdivision as the primary strategy, that can significantly enhance your returns because it reduces the time frame down. And so the less time that your capital is in the deal working, the better your return is going to be back on that capital, because it hasn't had to sweat for that long and hasn't had to take on huge amounts of risk. So when we look at your annualized equity IRR, the internal rate of return, it's 74%. Okay, where else can you achieve those sorts of numbers? Where can you get 74% return on your capital other than crypto? And how's crypto working out for you, Marco?
Yeah, no, not well.
I mean, look, this is property. This is real estate. We all know it like the back of our hand. We've grown up in houses all our lives. We get it. It's almost second nature. You know, is there risk associated to it? Absolutely, there's risk. You have to know what the risks are. But you also have to know how you can mitigate those risks as well. And you've got to be able to work through that detail. Now, you've not done anything like this before, yet in this particular example, you're probably going to do a 15x, 15 times better return than had you had that money sitting there in an offset account. You know, maybe 12x at 6% interest rate. But if you had it in term deposit, earning your 4%, you're probably sitting there, 15, 16x. And all you got to do is just roll up your sleeves, do a bit of work. You got the project manager in there. Hopefully you'll be able to sell all of these lots off and give it to a builder. Excellent work, mate. There's lots of comments coming in there on the comment section there, just saying, what a great deal, killer stuff, amazing, super inspiring. I mean, how does it make you feel to sit back and look at those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, especially considering, the typical buy and hold strategy that I have gone with, and, I've had the benefit of seeing my parents go through. Yeah, that would take you over over 10 years to achieve in a lot of cases, unless you got into a real winner. So yeah, of course yeah, it's an amazing feeling, and gives me a lot of hope and encouragement to go into the next deals as well, and sort of opens up the door of opportunities, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it just builds on that confidence, right? Like it's compounding. It just gets better and better, and you start to move forward with a lot more
Conviction.
yeah, conviction. Great word. Very good. So looking back now, what would have stopped you from doing a deal like this 12 months ago?
So, I mean, for me, 12 months ago, I just I didn't have the education and the knowledge to understand the process of subdivision end to end. And without that understanding, I just wouldn't have had the confidence to move on a deal like this. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, I didn't even realize that split contracts was a thing, let alone that I could do it. So yeah, wouldn't have known as possible. I mean, even down to the financing. Had you told me back then that you were going to be able to fund this yourself, I would have said, well, yeah, not possible. So yeah, working with a broker and financial strategist can really unlock that for you as well. And I think also, sorry, mate, I wouldn't have had access to that Viva, the Viva community, and where I can go and ask questions both to yourself and to the broader members, and have your deal challenged and reviewed and try to break it and get that input. And that builds a lot of confidence as well. It gives you that comfort that, yeah, you can look at a deal and maybe at the outset not be super confident, but you can go, you got the right place to go to clarify that and get the right questions asked.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Couldn't agree more. And I think just having that level of like someone looking over your shoulder, just nudging you forward, just, ticking boxes along the way, making sure that you're doing the right things, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. It can be enough of what you need to just take that next step forward. Without that, it's easy to become paralyzed. It's easy to sort of not know where to go to get the right answer, and so you just feel stuck. You don't know what is the best path forward, or maybe you haven't considered a different perspective or a different approach. And to be able to throw it out to people who are on a similar journey, some people might be further along, other people might be sitting further behind, but you're kind of getting this exposure to the playing field. You're seeing what everybody else is doing, and it's somewhat comforting in that your learning curve is steep, right? Because you're exposed to so much more than had you just be sticking in your own lane, learning through working maybe with just a coach, right? Because effectively they can only get so much out of you, and you can only move as fast as you know. But when you start seeing what other people are doing, and you start seeing their feesos, and you're like, oh, frick, I haven't thought of that number, and that's interesting. I might just touch base with that person, and because you saw them on a coach, like all of it just kind of helps build your mental model. And the quicker that you can build your mental model and understand the framework and understand the fundamentals, you can just move quicker with so much pace and so much more conviction, like you mentioned. And so my last question for you, right? We're going to wrap this up. We're well over time. What advice would you give to someone who's sitting there thinking, geez, I've got all this equity, but I feel stuck. Like I don't know what I can do. What would you say to them being in that position before?
Yeah, so and from my perspective, I'd say, invest in education. If you don't understand the subdivision process, invest in the education to do so, and get confidence in that process. Understand that you need to build a team around you, and that's something you learn in this program. Again, that was something that held me back. I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is world of development that's pretty scary, and how am I going to know all the intricacies of all the different aspects that come into it? But yeah, you got to build a team around you, and you learn how to do that through the course. And your planner, your broker, your builder, mentors, the community, it all helps to have build that team and help support you on your way. And then, get your numbers reviewed by people who have done it before with experience that can, pull you up, particularly as a first timer like myself.
Yeah. Is it scary, mate? Like, I mean, you mentioned before, like looking in, staring into the
Yeah.
abyss, like it can be pretty scary. Now that you're in it, like, is it scary to you?
No, no, definitely not. But I guess it comes with the support network that I've got now. And that builds a lot of confidence to be able to tackle this. Where, to your question, 12 months ago, I wouldn't have had that confidence.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, mate. So guys, we're getting to the end now. I can see that there's lots and lots of questions that are coming through. And Marco, how are you tracking for time?
I'm all good, mate.
All right. Well, we're going to endeavour to try and get through these questions for you, yeah, because I can see there's a lot of interest in this. And while we've got you, Marco, we may as well punch these out. Guys, I'm just
No
going to
worries.
share this link one last time. If you haven't gone ahead and booked in a call, I mean, I don't know what else you have to see to be able to go far out. There's something in the water that these guys are drinking. There absolutely is. I mean, everything that Marco's gone through. I mean, Marco, you're a completely different guy to the guy that I met at the very beginning of this. Your confidence and how you talk, and you know the words, and that wasn't you 6 months ago. And it's it's a very proud moment for me to be able to sit here and kind of tease all this out of you, because it is great work. It's very, very good work, mate. So if you haven't done that, guys, just go ahead, book in a session. It's free. My team's there. We're very good at these strategy sessions, looking at your portfolio. We're going to ask for some of your properties if you've got some. If you've got some legacy properties coming in, we'll ask you to send us through the links so we can have a look at them before the call. We'll do some planning and prep before you jump on there, but they're really, really worthwhile. They're really in depth. And look, at Viva, we're all about transforming lives through property and helping you to build equity as fast as possible, because that is the path to financial freedom. Once you build your bank, you've got a capital base, you've got an asset, you've got something that can be invested in cash flow. And so it's our mission to get you there as quick as possible. So go ahead, book that in. The link's there. I'm not going to mention that again, but thank you very much if you've gone in and already done so. So let's just go back and have a quick look at some of these questions here. There's lots and lots of acknowledgement there. So that's awesome. I'm not going to read those all out. Looking for the questions. They're going back pretty far here. So with the split contract, once the blocks are sold, that finalizes the development for you, Marco. You have no exposure throughout the build and the build outcome. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, essentially, yes to the answer. But I mean, from someone who wants to continue on down the space, I'll obviously stay involved through that process and make sure that the products are delivered incomplete to the end buyers.
Yep, that's exactly right. And to extend on that, there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. And look, I always preach this to my guys as well, right? So this is your reputation. You're building your legacy. If you're not a one-hit wonder, you're not going to be just doing one project and then sailing off into the sunset. You want to make sure that you're thinking about building your reputation. So what is it that you want to be known and what do you want to stand for, and what do you want to be known for? Because ultimately that also compounds. As you deliver more projects, people get to know what you're good for, quality-wise, all of that sort of thing. And so you kind of do want to stay in the project. You don't want to just kind of let it go and hope for the best. So there's two different ways that you can do it. You can build a project management fee into the delivery cost. Now, that can either be part of the development management fee that you put into the original numbers, which becomes part of your feasibility. And so when you settle on your lots, essentially you're getting paid for the development fee for you to continue to manage that project through to completion. Or you can also go and partner with the builder and do a deal with the builder and build it into the build contract, where the builder then pays you as the project manager to help sort of guide the project through to delivery as well. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but you do want to be involved, you do want to guide it, you do want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. What else have we got here? How did you approach the builder, and discuss the intention to sell as split contract? What parts of the process are they involved in?
So I've probably gone about it a slightly different way. As I said, I've partnered with an agent early who essentially exclusively sells the split contracts, home and land. And so I guess the way in which we will be doing it, sorry, to split the question out, I personally just reached out to the builders directly just to get an indication for my feasibility. I gave them rough, unit lot sizes, and then got them to provide, something off the box, off the shelf. What would I be looking at? So that was initially for my feasibility. In terms of what we'll actually be doing going forward, once we get the overall subdivision layout approved and we know what that looks like, through the agent, we'll be going to the various builders to then essentially quote on the design that we land on.
Yeah, very good. We've got a number of questions coming through as well. I can see people are trying to get their head around how you sort of structure this build contract. So it is a fixed price turnkey build project, a build contract. It's broken down into the individual lots and those individual dwellings. Yeah, so if the total build price is 2.116 million, I think you've got in there, 529,000 a piece. It's unlikely to be $529,000 equally for each of them. One might be 514, the bigger one might be 550. It's going to be dependent. So you are effectively specifying all of the finishes, the schedules, FF&E, all of that sort of stuff. The purchasers are inheriting a lot of what is already approved through planning. But depending on the builder that you go to, they may have the ability to offer some selection to the purchasers. So some builders, they go and partner with external companies that have showrooms. You can go in and you can choose your tiles, you can choose your paint colors, you can choose your tapware and all of that sort of stuff. And effectively then the builder just bolts that on as a package and a variation to the main contract. So they do what's called a post-contract variation. And so then the individual purchaser is then responsible to pay for those extras that they've effectively made changes to. So you effectively just want to issue a fixed price contract with locked in specs and all of that. Finishes, they can make changes dependent on the builder and how much flexibility the builders give. All right, let's keep moving. If you subdivide first, you have to pay the money to pay the 5% council contribution levy. How is that good? From Anna, if you subdivide first, you have to have the money to pay the 5% council contribution levy. So let's just be clear here, Anna. So when you pay a council contribution, you pay it directly before you get your statement of compliance or plan sealed from council. It's the last step in the process before you effectively package everything up and get your titles into the office. Because Marco's revenue and his profit is contingent on getting the titles out of the office as quick as possible, even if he has to pay development contributions, which I'm not sure you do on this one anyway, Marco, but
no,
you did, right? It's coming at the very end of his project timeline because he's not doing the build. Yeah. So the council contributions are just a cost of doing business if it's relevant to your property, your project. But often it's one of the last pieces that gets paid from equity because you generally can't borrow for council contributions in the project timeline. Hopefully that makes sense. What else have we got here? Lots and lots of comments. This is very cool. Nice to see the potential of what's possible when you can get the access to equity to get going. Love it. Oh, that was Chris Yates. Beautiful. Thanks, Chris. Sonia, is it a fixed building cost? I think we answered that. If not, does the buyer wear the price hikes? Yep, so we answered that one. Scott Edwards, this is a great story without doubt and likely why this one has been used as an example, but how many deals or projects have not ended well? What is the average return on equity for all projects that have used the Viva strategy? Yeah, look, we haven't had any projects go south. We've had one or two projects where builders have basically gone bankrupt halfway through a job, which we teach you exactly how to vet your builders, but not everybody builds, so that is just a component of risk that's going to come up in development, in property, right? It's not the first time it's ever happened. It's certainly not going to be the last time it's ever happened. The average return on equity that we tend to achieve in Viva sits between sort of 40 to 50%. If you're doing better than 50%, like that's hitting it out of the ballpark territory. We generally don't want to be sort of sitting anything lower than 30 to 40%, because often the risk that you're taking for the return that you're getting back on that money is probably outweighed. So you're going to be a little bit careful there as well. But that just gives you a bit of an idea. So certainly far better than the bank, probably by a factor of 6. Whoop, I'm just going to mute you. Sorry, I think I muted you, Marco. You might just need to unmute yourself. So hopefully that answers that question. Adnan, hi Michael, this is the best case study, which is great. Thanks for sharing this. What's your experience where you did feasibility and considered all the risks, but still profit disappeared at the end of projects? What were your learnings and what potential risks we should consider? I think that's a question for me. Happy to answer. Look, generally speaking, where a feasibility can go wrong is when you don't put enough emphasis behind the scrutiny of the end product that you're creating. The revenue, so what you're looking to generate from what you're creating, it should be the biggest number in your feasibility. If it's not the right deal. Keep looking. But where you don't properly calculate internal sizes, how big these need to be, what the market's prepared to pay for, what does the market want, what's achieved the best possible sales, but not in terms of the highest possible sale prices, but in terms of the mid of the market, generally what we're selling product into. We don't want to be selling at the high end of the market. We're in the luxury space, because there's fewer buyers there, right? We want to be selling in the sort of the middle of the market where most people can afford it. Now, where you get it wrong is when you miscalculate your revenue. And what you'll find is then when you go to sell, that you're getting all the wrong advice. Marco mentioned something before that we could have very well expanded on, is get your agents in early. They should be one of the first people that are coming to the table, even before you start the design, to help you build your brief to give to your designers, and to work through even the due diligence phase. They are the ones that are the gatekeepers of the money at the end, okay? They're the ones that are going to do not so much of the heavy lifting, but the heavy lifting, because they're the ones that ultimately bring in the revenue. But they should be coming in as early as possible. So that's one thing I'd say there. And as you can tell, Marco's done a really good job on understanding what the market wants and understanding who his competition is and what they're selling for and how he needs to price it and how big they need to be and, not too big and that kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Andrew, and what an excellent feeling helping someone to get such a great out. Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, can we get this session replayed? I would like to show my husband. Yeah, absolutely. If you like, I'll send out the replay to everyone who registered. So we've had quite a few people jump online, but I think we had a couple hundred people register. So there's a few that haven't showed up. So we'll get that out tomorrow for you, Lisa. Lots of thanks. Yep, awesome. I think we've got through. So, hang on. From Matt. Hey Marco, sounds like your story checks out. I love it how people think that we're phonies and things like that. How do your contingencies affect your final profit margin? You want to answer that?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the contingency, any additional contingencies you put in there are going to reduce your final profit or your return metrics. But as Mark has said, you'd rather have those contingencies in there, and then that comes back to you as a bit of extra cream on top than the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. If you can build in more contingency into your feasibility without breaking it, I mean, you want to litter your feasibility with contingency. You don't want to go over the top where you're breaking deals all the time and you're not picking anything up because you're being too conservative. With people that I know that are just too conservative and they struggle to find anything, you've got to look at it pragmatically and logically. Like, what is it actually going to cost? And if you're unsure, you've got to go and find the answers to those costs. But having a good, healthy contingency in your feasibility is just best practice. Marco's probably gone a bit beyond that, but again, it's still early days in this deal as well. So you've still got quite a few answers to get answers for. Jason, my serviceability is 90% personal and only 80% in a trust. Is it worth doing a first project in personal to build an initial equity base? Look, mate, I think if you went and did a side-by-side comparison in terms of what can I afford to buy in my personal name versus what I can afford to buy in a trust, there's not a huge discrepancy in terms of your borrowing capacity. But when you factor in the, say, take Marco's deal, for instance, if you're going to make $619,000 in profit and you've done that in your personal name, well, you're well and truly going to be over the highest marginal tax threshold. Yeah, so 47.5 cents in the dollar, it's going to go straight to the ATO. So all of the hard work, the risk, the due diligence, building your team and figuring it out and all of that stuff, right? Your capital, your hard-earned capital going on the line, nearly 50% of it just goes straight to the ATO because you failed to structure properly. Now, I don't want to sort of assume anything, but if you did a side-by-side comparison and said, right, if I did this deal in my personal name because I can borrow a little bit more, touch more, or I did this deal in a legal entity that gives me flexibility in terms of how I can legally minimize my tax, what's the total saving and what cash is left over at the end that stays in my bank, I could probably bet that the legal entity is going to be the way to go. So I'd start there. It always comes down to, bang for buck, dollars left over at the end of the day, which goes towards building your equity, which can then go to investing in income generating assets, which gives you the freedom, financial freedom, time back, not having to trade your time for a dollar. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's the game of this. And so early days, I mean, you've just got to be scrupulous about it. You can't be giving away money for free because you didn't take the time to properly scrutinize the structure before, at the very beginning. It's probably one of the most important decisions you can make. Dan Fraze, welcome to you, Fraze. Being off the plan sale, how long are you predicting them to be on the market for? Good question.
Well, I mean, we'll go to market on our timeline at about that 7-month mark, and then, as I said, we'll need time for all of the authorities to complete their pieces in terms of connections, etc. And that's typically the critical path of the whole project. So we'll at least have 4 or 5 months in terms of how quick we'll sell. Looking at the comparables. Some of these have sold, they've been on the market for less than 2 weeks, a lot of them in a lot of cases. So yeah, potentially, people will be a less, they won't want to settle as quick, knowing that we've still got the titles to drop. So having 4 or 5 months there, but compared to the peak development, I think we'll be able to move in pretty quickly.
Yep, very good. Adnan asked a question here. What level of minimum equity should we have to start for smaller projects of subdivision if we don't have a traditional mortgage serviceability? Fantastic question. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go about it, Adnan. I mean, in terms of me doing one of my first 5 1 into 2 lot subdivisions in the early days, I got away with putting down no more than $54,000 into one of those deals. And I did it all in my own right with 80% mortgage funded by NAB, but I used vendor finance. So I basically I convinced the vendor that I purchased the property off to leave 20% of their own money in the deal while I got in there and did the subdivision, did the renovation to the existing house, and then flipped that back onto the market. And then I paid them back within 12 months. You can get started with $0 today. We have people in the community that are out there doing joint ventures with people. They're partnering up with equity partners and equity participants. They're partnering up with people that have got good serviceability but don't have time, they don't have knowledge, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the ambition. They're happy to sort of come in and be involved in a project, but they don't want to be the one behind the wheel driving it day to day. Generally speaking, you've got what I call sort of a triangle. So you've got three components to the triangle, and that is time. So someone has to have the time and the skill to be able to, or the time to be able to put the effort in and to get the result. You've got to have the equity, right? So you've got to have the capital to be able to put into the project. And you've effectively got to have the skill. You've got to have the skill set to be able to do it. Now, when all those three things come together, you've sort of got that harmony where you can move forward and you can actually deliver on a project. Where you're, say, for instance, weak on time, but you've got the skill and you've got the capital, then you could do what Marco's just gone and done, and he's engaged a project manager on his behalf. Right? That's ticked the box of time because now he's got someone boots on the ground who's prepared to drive his program forward, that's got experience in doing it as well. Marco's building the skill set in the background, but he's also got the capital. Now, you might have time, but you may not have, say, the capital, but you've got the skill. Well, then you go and partner with the capital, right? Good opportunities are always, or I should say capital is always looking for good opportunities. If you can become a serial deal hunter where you're constantly going out there and you're putting together deals, the money always comes, okay? If you're prepared to put yourself out there and build relationships and present them and do it in the right way. And so you can get started for as little as nothing. If you've got a bit of money to put towards it, it could be a hybrid of both. If you're going out there and you're buying, say, $500,000 property, it requires $100,000 deposit, it requires $25,000, $30,000 in stamps. That's $130,000 that you'd need just there. And then if you're going to do a simple 1 into 2 lot subdivision, depending on which part of the country you're in, that's going to cost you anywhere from sort of generally $75,000 up to $120,000 in capital. Yeah, so generally speaking, our rule of thumb is for the equity that we're putting in, say that's $250,000 in that example I've just given you, we want to be getting $250,000 out in profit as well. So we get our original $250 out plus our $250 profit. Similar to Marco's numbers. Marco's putting $687 in, he's pulling $619,000 out plus his $687,000. We're always trying to keep those two numbers sort of similar. And when we do that, when we find deals that do that, often the return metrics are similar to what you've seen tonight. Hopefully that answers that. Scott, thanks for the honesty and for answering all the questions, not just picking the easy ones. That's great. Thamaya, great to see you. Amazing lads. Thank you so much for sharing the journey. I think we've got to the end, Marco, and we're only about 45 minutes over time. So for everyone that's left on the call, put your hands together, please, for Marco. Great work, Marco. Really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing your story, sharing your learnings and how you've put all this together. I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but it's very inspiring to me. I'm sure it's very inspiring to many other people as well. So, mate, kudos to you. It's awesome to see you shine. It's awesome to see you grow. And it's great to see you just out there, still batting away, looking for more deals. So, yeah, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks, mate.
More words from you?
No, thank you very much. Thanks for the time. Yeah, it was good to talk through it with you.
Awesome, guys. Okay, well, thanks for everyone who's stayed online. Very, very much appreciate you listening and look forward to chatting with you soon. Bye for now.